this is day 4, and we're going to take a look here. We're getting ready to formulate a plan to take the roof off, and we're going to see what the best plan is for attack here. Stay tuned, this should be pretty interesting. We have 2 sections here. This outer portion without the wood shingles is a newer section. This side up towards to the barn is an older section. So I think we're going to try to take this newer section off first. Maybe just pick it up off this outside wall and see what happens. Maybe come through here and just cut these. This is setting on a big beam here. I don't know what that is. Maybe a 6-inch, a 6x6, 6x8. But this is where the new roof and the old roof come together. And you can see here the purlins on the top. So I think if we cut along here and pick up out here, we may be able to get this thing off. Maybe fairly easy, we'll see. Here's our plan A for disassembling the roof. We thought maybe we could lift up the roof off the top plate on that outer wall, which worked really well. And then our thought process after we disconnected it was to pull it away from the beam where the old roof and the new roof meet. And as you see here, we hook a chain up and give it a couple of good yanks, and it wasn't coming off. It was nailed on there much better than we thought. So we decided at this point that it was probably better to take a gentler approach at disassembling this roof. So the section that we just loosened, we decided to use a chainsaw and basically cut it away from the older section of the roof and see what happens. My thought process at this point was it was probably just going to fall in, and you'll see here later on what happens. But we needed to cut down the side to release it from the side wall, and then cut the rafters off over top that beam to release it, the newer section, from the older section. The trick here is with the chainsaw, of course, you have to watch out for nails, because you hit one nail with your chainsaw and you're pretty much done, back to sharpening, if you can salvage your blade. So you have to be really careful at this point. And this is the only section where we decided to use the chainsaw. We later moved into a Sawzall with a wood-metal combo blade. Day 5, and yesterday we took part of the roof off the lean-to, and my phone ran out of storage space, so I'm going to give you guys the aftermath and explain what we did. All right, so here's a look inside at what we did. And we basically went along the purlins here and just took a chainsaw and cut them off, cut down the sides, and I kind of sat on top of the roof, on top of this beam here, and reached over and cut these off, and everything fell in, and this is actually the way things landed. So today's project, we're going to get these back barn siding boards here. These here, all taken off. And this was the section that was added on afterwards. So we're going to take all this barn siding off, get it on a pallet, and then pull all these posts out. And then we're down to where the old roof, the original roof, is left, which is on top of all the beams. So I promise you guys, I'll save some phone battery and some memory, and we'll get how we're going to do this. I think I have a game plan on how to tackle this. It's going to be a little bit messy because those are wood shingles up there, and man, they are just like powder. So it's going to be a little messy, I think, but I think we can get it down and get it down just where the purlins are left underneath, and then we can take the purlins out one by one is kind of the goal. And if that works, then we're going to use that for the main roof up here when we come back, probably next spring. We're not going to get to it on this trip. I'm running out of time here and I got to get back for work. But good progress, day 5. Hoping to have all this done, off, and ready to haul home. And we've started a little pile out back. I think we're going to try to dig a hole out back and burn some of this wood. If we are unsuccessful in that, because we don't have a backhoe, we will probably cut this stuff down and load it up and maybe take it to the landfill. It's about the cheapest way to go. But that's where we're at. And I'll give you we'll maybe do a little time lapse here getting this barn siding off. I did a little test on some of that. It looked to be salvageable, like it was worth saving. So we're going to go ahead and do that and maybe use that in the barn dough build back home. With the roof disconnected and the sidewalls disconnected, it was time to start taking the outer framing down. And this is where the tractor was a big time saver. These posts were all buried in the ground. They weren't in concrete, so they came out pretty easy. And amazingly enough, there wasn't any of them that were really rotted off. There was some rot, but they all pulled out, and we just took those to the burn pit. They were just treated 4x4s, and after you get the part that was in the ground cut off, there was maybe 5-6 feet left, so we just elected, instead of piling them up, elected to burn them. And that's what you don't see on this video. We had a neighbor come in with his backhoe and dig us a little pit, and all the wood that was not going to make the trip back to North Carolina, we just drug it over there and then later pushed it in the hole and had ourselves a little bonfire. Up to this point, the cleanup really wasn't that bad. When we get into the shingles, that's when the mess really started. But as far as the framework goes, that was pretty easy to clean up. And you can see here where the 2 posts were that were cut off on the older section, and I can just imagine what this building looked like back in the day before this addition was put on. Really kind of a pretty setup. I don't know if they had cattle or horses or what this porch type area was used for. Maybe it was just storage, I don't know. But it really looks pretty. All right, day 6. And this is where things are going to get a little exciting. We're going to go up there on the top of the scaffolding and try to cut this overhang off and see how it goes. This is my plan A. Don't really have a plan B, so I hope plan A works. So these shingles are what we're dealing with. And as you can see, there's just nothing left. So I think they're probably going to turn to powder here when we cut them, but we'll see how big of a mess it makes. So I'm just going to cut this end fascia board off and then come back and try to cut the overhang off up to the wall here, and we'll see how messy it gets. But if that works, then maybe try my plan for the rest of the roof. So we'll see. We're finally tackling the old section of roof where all of the old cedar shingles are. And we elected to use a Sawzall to handle this just due to the sheer number of nails that were used to put these shingles on. I mean, there was just oodles and oodles of nails with these shingles. So using a chainsaw was not an option. So we used a wood metal combo blade in the Sawzall, and it seemed to work pretty well. It cut through the wood at a decent rate, and also when you hit the nails, it just kind of buzzed through them as well. We didn't have enough extension cord to get from the power pole over, so we had to set up a portable generator to run the Sawzall. And this is really where the mess started. These wood shingles were just all over the place when we started cutting them. Our thought process here, we wanted to try again using the equipment, so we thought let's disconnect a small section of roof from the building, just maybe like 3 rafters I think is what we ended up deciding on. So I cut a little hole here to poke through and cut it back to the peak there, or the hip, and see if we can't use the tractor just to pull a small section of the roof off. We thought maybe this would be a pretty good time saver if we could make it happen. But as you'll see here in a little bit, we give it the old good college try, but it just it was nailed on way better than what we thought, and the wood just the rafters just kind of broke away as we lifted them. And you can see here that the whole building was kind of moving when we did this. The posts, none of the posts were set in, the older posts were set in the ground. They were just on block, which to me is pretty amazing. But this didn't work in the end, so we ended up taking a more precision approach and just doing the manual labor to get all these boards and shingles and rafters and stuff disconnected. So we just had to cut them out one by one, and that seemed to be the best way to salvage the timbers and keep us moving. It ended up being a lot of work, but we had the tools to get it done, and we had the time, so we got it done safely. And you can see here those shingles just peel right off. There wasn't much left, and as I'm cutting, they're actually vibrating down the roof. And man, there was so many nails, so many shingles on the ground. Luckily, I brought a magnet on wheels, and I bet I picked up, I don't know, a gallon of these little nails that were all over. And luckily, we ended up at the end of the project, we didn't have any flat tires. We at least got most of the nails, the majority of them, put them in buckets, and they ended up going in the recycling bin as well. But there we get the outer section off, and then I decided to try it on the inside to cut from underneath just to kind of see what it was going to be like, because I think this may be the method we use on the big portion of the barn when we just get back and decide to take it down. Probably won't be on ladders, probably get some man lifts to get in there, but I think this may be the method, the safest and best way to take the roof down on the main part. Again, it takes time and energy and to get it done, but you get it done safe, and we're able to salvage a lot of the wood from this section of the building. So we're going to have just that much more when we decide to tackle the big section. It'll be that much more work as well, but we'll have a lot of wood that we can salvage and hopefully use in the barn door build here in North Carolina. So I brought extra blades for my Sawzall, but I didn't expect this. The shaft broke off the tool, so I guess it's off to the tool store and pick up an extra Sawzall. Kind of funny that the blade, this was a used blade, a Diablo metal blade, and it was heavily used when I got here, and this is all I've used, so the blade outlasted the tool. Pretty sad. Barring any issues today, we should have the roof finished up, and just kind of wanted to give you guys a look at what I'm walking on. You really have to be careful when you do these projects about where you put your hands and feet, because there's some parts of this roof that are not in good shape, we'll put it that way. So you can see the wood shingles are they're basically powder. When you walk on them, they flake off, and you can see the holes in the roof. Some of the underboards are not good. I don't know what you would call those, the planking, I guess. So you just have to be careful when you're doing this stuff, where you're putting your weight. I try to stay over top of the purlins or the rafters. That way, those look like they're pretty good shape for the most part. A couple of them that are rotted, but those have been doing a pretty good job of carrying my weight. I try to stay out of the area in between them, because that's going to be your weak spot. And I try to distribute my weight on my, obviously both of my feet, but a lot of times I'm sitting on my butt or on my knees. So I got my knees and my feet. So sometimes 3-4 points of contact just to help spread my weight out. So that's how I'm taking care of this roof. This roof is a little lower. We're probably 15 feet up. But this roof above me is probably going to be a little bit of a different story. I think probably the safest way to work on that after we get the steel off is probably to work from underneath and cut things out from underneath, and then take the rafters out one by one. It's a little more at risk when you're up that high, probably another 10 feet up, so probably 25 feet up. So if you fall from that height, you're in deep trouble. So we want to try to manage the risk on this project here. We don't want anybody to get hurt, or heaven forbid anybody get killed on it. So you just have to take your time, think things through, and from what I've learned, muscle isn't always the best avenue to deconstruction. Just taking it down piece by piece, taking your time, and making sure you do things safe, and make sure the structure that you're on top of is as sound as it can be until the moment you're ready to bring the rest of it down. So that's how we're doing this. We'll have the roof wrapped up today, hopefully, and got less than half of it left to do, probably a third or maybe a quarter of it to do. And we'll give you a look after we get the roof off. This is exactly what I'm talking about right here. You just have to really be careful where you're putting your weight. As you can see, this whole board is just not good. Rotted, cracked, and you're on an end here that I've cut off. So this is a board. You just have to watch where you're putting your weight. Putting your elbow on this or your foot. I mean, if I stepped on that, I'd probably go through. So there is some danger built into this, but you just have to really be conscious of what's underneath of you, how you're walking, where you're putting your weight, and mitigating those risks as much as possible, managing it. So we're almost to the end. All right, it's time to start dropping the rafters, and what we're going to do is cut the nail off at the top, then move down to the bottom, cut the bottom, and pull them out.
And that's how I've come up with doing it safely. I'm out of the way and I'm not up in the air. We're gonna do that with the rest of them. Shouldn't take too long.